What is up, you guys? It is ZXRyuu, and today we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation 1 and the Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PS4. So I've already got some footage pre-recorded from both games, and I'm just going to kind of play them side-by-side, and we'll just go through and talk about it. I'm going to give some commentary on some things that are different and similar, and I mean, the games are pretty different, but you know what I mean, just some interesting commentary. So I hope you guys are ready for that, and let's go. Okay, so we've got kind of both games up on here. So the window on the left is the original Final Fantasy, and the window on the right is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I just got the credits kind of rolling here so that I can give some time to talk a little bit about some of the options in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So it first kind of comes up and gives you some camera control options, so you can do default, or you can invert Y, or invert X, or invert both of them. And then there's kind of three different difficulties that you can play on, or I guess different ways of playing the game, I guess. So there's classic, there's easy, and there's normal. And they just kind of focus on different things. Like the classic just lets you run on just doing abilities. Easy lets you focus more on just like abilities and other things, and then the normal mode lets you enjoy the battles and the story. So easy is if you really want to play it without getting too distracted by the fighting, and you just want to focus on the story. So they kind of separated it out that way. But anyway, so we've got the openings, which they redid the opening a little bit. It's not like a direct one-to-one type of thing that they did. They, I guess, just decided to put a little bit more emphasis on Aerith just figuring out that, or Eris, I guess, depending on how you say it or how you know it, that there's something wrong with the planet and that it's crying out. So they put a little bit more emphasis there, whereas in the original Final Fantasy VII, you don't hear any of that or see any of that. So, in this whole sequence where she gets kind of railroaded on the side wasn't in there either. So it's really interesting seeing them side by side as well, because after 23 years of graphical updates, I mean, you can see how big of a jump it is from the original Final Fantasy VII, which was released in 1997, and then the remake, which is going to be out here in a few days in 2020. So I mean, the amount of graphic updates between the PS1 and the PS4 is just pretty unreal. And what's interesting is the music tracks are a little bit different, but you can kind of line them up to where the sound for the openings and stuff is pretty identical. So it's pretty interesting. So I don't know. I mean, just these two shots of Midgar are just pretty insane, like what they have done for differences here. So it's just unreal what they've come up with, and I think this is actually running on the Unreal Engine as well. So anyway, we've got the kind of the intro section. I guess just as an aside, the Final Fantasy VII, the original one, only took me about 30 minutes to go through. So it's gonna kind of pause, and the screen's just gonna go black. I'm just pausing the video recording that I did, so that the Final Fantasy VII Remake can kind of play out and get up to a certain point as well. So you might want to watch this video a few times if you want to kind of see the comparisons between stuff. I tried to line it up with some of the major events, but since there's so much stuff in the remake, you can't line it up exactly. So that's just gonna happen. But anyway, so this opening scene here is a little bit different, where Jesse still kicks the guy, but Biggs throws him down to the ground, whereas they kind of team attack him in the remake. So, and again, the remake is really embellished, so there's a lot more stuff going on here. So, but Cloud still does his cool flip animation. I think they made that look even cooler doing that. So, and the Final Fantasy VII Remake is not turn-based battles. You can either put it on auto or fight it out yourself if you're, depending on what difficulty or what mode you're playing on. I guess it's not really a difficulty, it's more of a mode. But anyway, this is more like Kingdom Hearts where you're attacking in real time and fighting enemies. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do some of the bosses and stuff later on in the game, especially like the Omega weapon or Ruby weapon or Emerald weapon. I guess later some of these really big bosses are going to be interesting to see how they've really gone through and remade it, because the demo gets you through the bombing mission, and it doesn't go very far. And what's interesting is it was pointed out to me by Tommy12 that the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo is actually the same exact section that they used for the original Final Fantasy VII demo. Unfortunately, I don't have that. I just have the Final Fantasy VII game for the PlayStation 1. So that's kind of what I used to record it. And just as an aside, some of it's kind of sloppy. This is the first time I've gone through the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo. So there's going to be parts where I'm just like wandering around, not really knowing where I'm supposed to go, because I'm just looking around to see what all's available to me to do. And I don't know, just kind of just looking around and just seeing how shiny it is. Plus there's a bunch of extra menus and things that the game shows you during the demo to help you out, because there's a lot to figure out since they've completely redone the system. So, and those little sidebar things are what they're talking about. There's also a thing in the menu here that comes up where it says manual, and that's just a bunch of like tutorials, a bunch of things to help you out to understand what you're supposed to do with the game. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going through each menu, looking to see what is available to me at this point that I can do. But again, since it's a demo, it's not really expansive. There's not a whole lot you can do, but you can go look through all the manuals to see what all they've kind of included with this demo. So the demo for Final Fantasy VII Remake is about 8 gigabytes in size, and it just covers the bombing mission. But those are all the manuals and things that you can go through to help you out. But anyway, the full game is going to be released here in a few days, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that's going to be. If you guys are interested, leave notes in the comments or like this video or whatever, and I'll see if I can do some more stuff with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you guys are interested in seeing me do some stuff in there, I don't know if I'm going to do like a whole like let's play on it, because again, since it's Final Fantasy VII, it's like 60 plus hours, and if I'm playing through it casually, that's going to be each part I do on videos is about an hour, so it'd be like 60 videos long or something if I went through the entire game. So you guys might not want to see that, but if you're interested in it, leave comments, let me know. I'll see what I can do about it. So I think what's cool about the Final Fantasy VII Remake is they really like filled in a lot more character interactions and just like different views and different angles. Like, there's always these fading effects that they do in the original Final Fantasy VII to go between areas. But the remake, it's all run together. There's not really a bunch of switching areas. So, it kind of gives you like a little message up on the top that says, hey, this is the section that you're in, kind of like Kingdom Hearts. But, which, again, this is kind of what this is based around. Since Tetsuya Nomura worked on Kingdom Hearts, he also kind of implemented the same type of engine and same idea and concept, I guess, into this game. So it's it's very open world. You can do a lot of stuff. There's a lot of interaction with the world around you, and I don't know, just even from the demo, they did a lot of good stuff here. So, and when I was playing through the demo, it seemed to be pretty fluid, and it wasn't like, glitching out or laggy or this kind of thing. So, I mean, it's pretty much what we've come to expect from a Square Enix game, that it looks really good, it functions really well. They really kept attention to detail. Like, depending on what side you come at a treasure chest with Cloud, he'll either open it with his right hand or his left hand. You can kind of see the animation where they're going up and down the stairs. Just really interesting attention to detail in this game that they really tried to envelop you into the game so that you feel like you're there. And Square Enix has really tried to do that, I think. But they're not the only company, obviously, that does that with games and stuff. So, So anyway, yeah, I mean, you can see how long the pauses are between, you know, when what you're doing in the remake and what you would be doing in the original. So, and a lot of the conversations are different. They're more involved. There's just a lot more dialogue. So they really just embellished the story to make the world seem a lot bigger. So, you know, and they did that with Advent Children also. They, you know, just tried to make the world seem a lot more, just more. So, it was kind of interesting going back through the original Final Fantasy VII again. I kind of forgot how kind of like clunky it is. I mean, it's all right, but it can get kind of clunky and hard to control. You know, especially if you're using like the D-pad to move around like the original PlayStation had. So I don't know. And what's kind of interesting, too, is they took away the option to name your character now. You know, in RPGs, you could always name your character. But in the remake, they took that away from you. I mean, I guess it's like it's very set in stone who these characters are, and they don't want you changing their names anymore. So I don't think Squaresoft at that time, now Square Enix, really realized how big Final Fantasy VII was going to get. Just the community just blew up around it, so it's a very, very popular game, and you know, people that don't play video games very much have probably heard of it. I mean, that's just my guess. Yeah, they've got a lot more scenes, a lot more interaction with the characters, seeing kind of what the characters are feeling at certain points, and you know, they just put a bunch of extra stuff in there to just make you feel like it's a bigger world. And Final Fantasy VII wasn't exactly small when it first came out either, and so I thought this was a cool thing that they went back and they put the same scene in here as well. You know, comparing the two, I thought that was cool. You can see the Mako reactor in the back on both of them. I think that was a really cool thing that they did. They kept a lot of similarities. You know, a lot of the look and feel of the world. They really kept a lot of the same enemies. You know, they went back and redesigned certain enemies. Like you can see the guard dog and the soldier in this fight here. They kept that group of enemies specifically that you fight in this same section. You know, the encounters are more set in the remake. They're not random like they are in the original game. And also, too, they kind of divided up, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, they divided up who has what when you have party members and stuff. So they really kind of changed up how certain things work and who gets what stuff in order to kind of introduce you to the concept of characters and who can do what and how they work. And so they put a lot of work into the demo to kind of separate out all that stuff so you can just kind of see, you know, what you're supposed to do now and what you have the option to do. So these little boxes that have like the Shinra Corporation on them, you can break them, and they have certain items like potions or Phoenix Downs, or they recover MP, or this kind of thing. And so one thing that I thought was kind of weird and I think somewhat unfortunate is some of the hitbox detection on like these interacting panels where they have like the bar in a little like diamond shape or whatever, saying that you can do something with it. Really, I think it's basically the same thing from Final Fantasy 15. The thing I don't like about that, though, is that the hitbox detection on it is kind of weird. Like, if you're not, like, exactly facing it or exactly turned the right way, you can't interact with it. Like, if you're turned just slightly off, you can't get to it. And that was kind of annoying because it's annoying in 15. And so I'm kind of bummed that they didn't, like, fix that in some way. I mean, it looks like they did a little bit more fault tolerance on it where it'll, like, snap you to it most of the time. But sometimes you have to kind of like move around and mash the button for it to kind of pick up your input on that and actually have you interact with it. So I thought that was kind of a bummer, but I mean, that's like, you know, a minor gripe with comparison to everything else they've done that's good in this game so far. So each character's got like you know, different attack styles, obviously. They've got different modes and things that you can switch to now. So they described this a little bit, but there's like an operator mode, and then there's kind of like a more aggressive mode where Cloud moves slower, but he attacks more. So they've added in things like that. Each character's got a different mode that they can use. So, and again, you know, you can pick up different things. The characters have a lot more hit points because it's kind of, you know, a Final Fantasy 15 type of style, so they gave you a lot more hit points. The potions and items do a lot more. I guess they heal you more, because in the original Final Fantasy VII, the potions only healed you 100. But in this game, they heal you like 350 or something like that. So, so again, we have the same kind of section here, and the reason why I turned this back on here is because there's this random like combat section here that I had in the original game. So, so coming up here is the same room, but what's weird is that you can't talk to Wedge here for some reason. He doesn't say that he'll like secure their exit point or whatever. In the original Final Fantasy VII, he would say something about what he's, you know, why he's standing there, if you talk to him. But in this game, it doesn't. So it's kind of weird. They also embellished this kind of like zoom out so you can see what Mako Reactor looks like. In the original Final Fantasy VII, you just walk through a door. So they kind of embellished that a little bit more. So I guess anybody that's familiar with the original Final Fantasy VII, some of Barrett's and I think some of Sid's conversation points, whenever they'd say like some bad word or something like that, it'd usually just be like a bunch of symbols, you know, like people do. But they took all that out and, you know, completely retranslated it, completely, you know, did a whole new script and all this stuff. So there is more language in this version of the game. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. You know, if that bothers you or this is a problem for you. So there's just more. And you know, I guess that would be the case since there's more dialogue, but also too it's I guess a little bit different time in the gaming industry as well, because in the 90s, you know, the late 90s, they were doing a lot more stuff with censorship here in the US, and they've kind of done away with a lot of that. As time has gone on, you know, and the games all have ratings now, and you know, all this stuff. So they just like completely redone all of the scripting and everything in there. So I guess that's the long way of saying that is just be aware that there's more stuff in there. So so if that bothers you, just keep that in mind. So this whole room here is pretty much a one-to-one copy, you know, between the original Final Fantasy VII and the remake.
You've got this.
So anyway, this is the section where they're talking about mode switching here. So I've kind of switched into the more aggressive mode, and so you can see that Cloud attacks a lot more and is more powerful, but he moves very, very slowly. He's got the sword up here, and he just kind of slowly moves forward rather than, you know, just moving normally with the sword by his side. So I mean, again, like I said before, I'm moving around to just kind of see what's available and what's out there and stuff. Because they did hide some of the same items in the same places. I guess hide. They put the same items in the same places in both games. So I thought that was interesting. You know, trying to keep the feel of the original.
Well, what are you waiting for?
So. But yeah, I mean, they've done a lot of stuff. Like if you try and go back and talk to some of the guys, you know, they say, oh, okay, I'm holding this position for such a reason. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, and coming up here, Jesse's going to tell you to like hit a box or push a button. But this is kind of where the hitbox detection went a little weird on me. So I just thought I would, you know, go ahead and point that out because it's still. Because I'm going to try and push the button, but what's weird is when I go to back up, it's going to snap to Barrett's box instead, and so I end up talking to him. So, but it does kind of move you automatically to push stuff when you eventually interact with it. But it's still kind of the same thing as Final Fantasy 15, where they have that same problem, where you're trying to pick stuff up or you're trying to talk to people, and it's just doing the thing you didn't really intend.
Tifa and I.
So yeah, this whole section with Jesse talking about Tifa and to Cloud is all new. There's none of that in the original game. So again, I mean, they're just putting more dialogue to make it feel more real, so that you feel like you're more involved in the game. You get a better understanding of the characters. This whole section here is new, where the president's having this conversation.
These sewer rats appear to call themselves
with Heidecker there. He's having this whole conversation now that wasn't in there before. And a little bit later on, too, there's another kind of interaction with the two of them to kind of build up the story more, because there was a few things that were kind of confusing as to what was going on and what was happening. So they're trying to build up some more of the character development, so you can see what's happening behind the scenes while all this stuff is going on. It's not just like you guys and you guys alone. Like there's stuff going on in the rest of the world that's affecting you that now you kind of get to see. So which I think is cool. I mean, it gives a more interesting broader spectrum of the story, I guess. It just makes the story feel bigger. So, and the original mission was to come here and destroy the Mako reactor, because the Shinra Corporation is bleeding the Earth dry, because Mako is kind of like the life energy of the planet. And the main story for Final Fantasy VII was really the Earth is being harmed by what we're doing. It was a really big, it just had a big undertone or overtone for the storyline, was just that we're really hurting the planet and we really need to take care of it in kind of a different sci-fi way, I guess. Just saying they're using Mako, but, we're drilling for oil, and they were kind of just making these kind of comparisons. So it was just be kind to the planet. So, and, that gets into a whole realm of, what, religion and some of this, philosophy and some of this other stuff that we're not going to go into here, but it does touch on a lot of that, with how we treat the planet, and that's, the storyline of Final Fantasy VII. So, so there is that throughout the game as well. And Cloud's still just saying, this is just a job. I'm just here to get a paycheck. I don't really care about, I don't sympathize with Barrett and all this other stuff. It's like they're trying to just show that Cloud really is just a merchant here. And also, to the other guys, Biggs, Wegs, and Jesse, are kind of like, maybe Barrett's a little crazy, but I don't know. So anyway, this section of the remake here kind of introduces this new idea that you can switch between the characters kind of at will, and they can do different things. They all have different abilities. They can, help each other out. You can issue them commands, to tell them to do certain things, or you can just take control of them yourself and do stuff. So, so Barrett works to destroy these turrets here because Cloud can't reach them. And then, so that whole concept is definitely different for this game, because you couldn't do that for, in the original Final Fantasy VII. But I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting how they've integrated the enemies into the surroundings and put them into the levels to make it feel more like, if we infiltrated some big corporation and big industrial plant, they would have some security systems, and they'd be, on the ceilings and in different places. So, they really wanted to make this game just be a lot more and be very involved and very true to form, I guess. So, and some of the bigger enemies that you see in the original game and also in this one, they've kind of separated out to be almost like a boss or a mini boss type of thing, just to show the scale of these enemies and how it actually would be kind of scary and pretty dangerous to fight against this stuff, because in a lot of RPGs they have you know, only so much space, so the character sprites are only, you know, X size or whatever. Like, you know, Behemoth in Final Fantasy VI was pretty large compared to your characters. You know, but then they really made a point to say, hey, this is what Behemoth would look like in the real world. So like in Final Fantasy 15, when you fight against Behemoth, it's gigantic. So, so they kind of do the same thing here, where they show, hey, these enemies are really big and they can be really dangerous. So, and they just take a lot more. So in the remake here, they give you kind of the option to, you're always kind of like jogging, but they give you the option to kind of like dash. And unlike Final Fantasy 15, there's no like dash meter, at least in the remake anyway, or at least in the demo, sorry. There's no dash meter. So you can just kind of run indefinitely and you don't have to refill it like you do in 15, which I thought was a good change. So let's see, so these lasers, this whole section in here is all new. That wasn't in the original game, so they put this whole section in here to show. And I thought for some reason, I don't know if that was just me, but it seemed like the hitboxes on those laser beams was pretty large, so even just getting close to them, I was getting hit, and I was like, well, that's strange, but... and I think it's funny, too, you know, it's like when you swing a giant sword against a bunch of cardboard boxes, it blows them everywhere, so, like, well, that kind of makes sense, I guess. So... yeah, so anyway, they put the dash thing in there so you can run super fast and you don't have to worry about running out of meter. Okay, so this is one of those enemies I was talking about before where this is a sweeper, and you might have been able to see it on the original Final Fantasy VII video. You can kind of back it up or whatever, but one of the enemy groups has one of those in it, and it's, you know, it's big, but it's not that big. So they just kind of put it in perspective. Hey, these enemies are big, and they're dangerous, and this is what they would be like, you know, if you fought them in a big corporation. So, and I guess at this point, too, Cloud has fire magic, but Cloud also mentions, I'm not sure if it's on this enemy, I couldn't see the dialogue, but it's either this enemy or an enemy later where he says they're weak to electric. And it turns out that Barrett actually has the bolt spell. I think they call it something different in this one. I don't think it's bolt, but he has the bolt spell. And so you have to kind of switch between the characters if you want to use different spells, at least in the demo. So I thought that was interesting. So Cloud has the fire spell, Barrett has the bolt and ice spells. So there's also weak points on enemies as well. Like, you know, Cloud will say, hey, this enemy's weak from the backside, so try and attack it there, or try and attack the legs, or, you know, do this kind of thing, or they're weak to this type of magic. So, you know, and they say that, oh, Cloud has all this information because he used to work for Shinra, so they make that a little bit more clear in this version as well, you know, to kind of clear up some of that stuff, because some of that was unclear as to, you know, what's going on here until later. So they've kind of worked to smooth the story over in places so that it flows better, because the original Final Fantasy VII has some stuff didn't quite make sense, and I think that was partly due to the translation, but I think that was also just due to the space limitations and what they had to work with at the time in order to cram it all in here. You know, because Final Fantasy VII was on 3 discs, so and that was pretty gigantic for the time. So, you know, and the remake's going to be all on one Blu-ray and stuff. So, and it's going to run in 4K. This is captured in 1080p because I don't have a PS4 Pro. I just have the very original first-gen model of the PS4. So this is running in 1080p here, but it still looks amazing. So this whole section here with the original game isn't quite the same in the remake. They went back and redid the layout a little bit, so it doesn't look exactly the same, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's, you know, you can still tell it's the same world, you know. So, because here, Jesse's just saying, hey, the reactor's down there, but in the original game, you know, you can't see that far ahead, so you're just kind of moving that way. So, and again, since this is a demo, there's no save point in the remake, so you know, you just kind of have to work with it. You know, if you die, try again. There's options to change the difficulty on the fly in the menu, like you can in some of the Kingdom Hearts games. If you're familiar with that, they let you change the difficulty part of the way through. So the same thing is true here. So anyway, on the original Final Fantasy VII, there you can see the sweeper enemy, and you know, Cloud using the bolt spell on it. So, so that's what those things look like. So they weren't as big. Also, these other enemies here that you see, they are a little bit later. In the remake. They're not here in this same section, so they show up a little bit later. And they're kind of like a special enemy as well, so so I think that's kind of interesting. So they're a lot different, so specifically those enemies they've changed quite a bit. But again, yeah, these little drone things that they have flying around, those are in the original game. They're just like on the ground, you know, hovering rather than flying up in the air, because in this game you can actually like dash and hit people in the air instead, but turrets you can't, so you have to switch to Barret in order to destroy those turrets. So they're just trying to, I don't know if they're really trying to limit the player, but they're just trying to make it more expansive. I keep saying that, but they're just trying to make it more interactive, more like what it would be if this was real life. So, and I thought it was interesting too that I forgot that Cloud in the original Final Fantasy VII starts at level 7. So they kept true to that in the remake, and he starts at level 7. So I just think that's interesting that, you know, it's Final Fantasy VII, he starts at level 7. You know, I didn't make that connection until playing through it again. I was like, oh yeah, duh, that makes sense. So there's ways too where in this game you can climb up and down ladders faster. So one of the things that they did here was they gave you the option, if you hold one of the buttons, I can't remember which one it is right now, but if you hold one of the buttons, you'll slide down the ladders or you'll climb up the ladders faster. So they did stuff with that. One thing about the system that's kind of different or just interesting is that you can attack normally with like your square attacks where, you know, Cloud is slashing or Barret is shooting. You can do a lot of that just normally, but if you want to use spells or abilities, you have to wait till the ATB bar down at the bottom gets full. Then you can use spells. So using items takes away half of it. Using spells, I think, takes away all of it. Using your limit does some. So you've got to keep an eye on your ATB bar with all the characters if you want to do certain things. So I have a feeling that that system might take a little bit getting used to right at first to be able to keep track and manage all that stuff. So on the Final Fantasy VII window, I'm just kind of going through the menu, making sure that I've gotten everything all set up for this thing coming up here. For this boss coming up here, so that's why I was fiddling around in the menus as I was looking for a few things and trying to remember what I could and couldn't do at this point. So, so that's why all of that's over there. But now we're gonna set the bomb and get ready to go here. So,
I'm fine. What about the timer?
Your call.
So in this section again is 1-to-1. Something about the remake where it asks you what you want to do for the timer. There's a 30-minute timer and there's a 20-minute timer. In the demo, if you do the 20-minute timer, it gives you a little bit of an extra scene at the end when you complete the game, you know, complete the demo. So, so I included that as well. So that we'll talk about that at the end. But anyway, so this this giant machine here is the Scorpion boss is a lot larger in the remake, and it's a lot more dangerous. It is not very tough in the original Final Fantasy VII. There's just one section, and I kind of triggered it on purpose because the remake does kind of something similar at the very end of the fight with the tail laser. So I just set it off on purpose just so you can kind of see that as well, that it does exist in the remake, but it's just different. So you can get captured in the remake too. Like they'll grab certain characters, so you have to switch to other characters to kind of get them out of that. So like what I did with Barrett's overcharge there, I just kind of hit the enemy to break him out of it, break Cloud out of it. So and again, this thing is weak to Bolt, and it didn't occur to me until a little bit later on to switch over to Barrett to see what abilities he had and what he could do, because he has the Bolt magic. So so I thought that was kind of an interesting change, I guess, that they gave Barrett the Bolt magic, because Cloud's always kind of like talking to the player saying, hey, we need to use Bolt. There's kind of a weird translation thing, at least I think so, with the original Final Fantasy VII, is it says attack while the tail's up, and it'll counterattack, and so it should have been don't attack while the tail's up because it'll counterattack, so it was kind of a weird translation thing there that got lost. They put the tense in the wrong place. But anyway, the machine in the remake does have the tail laser, it's just different. And it also has a bunch of other lasers and missiles and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, so anyway, you know, you just wait for the tail to go back down and then you can attack it. But so pretty much what I'm doing here is there's a shield that the Scorpion has that it didn't have in the original game. So it takes a while to kind of, you have to get behind it. There's like a little, I don't know, like orb thing or something that you have to attack, some node that you have to attack in order to break the shield. So anyway, yeah, the fight in the original Final Fantasy VII goes really quick, but this fight with the Scorpion is pretty involved. So it took quite a bit longer to get rid of it. But yeah, you're supposed to attack the red orb, and eventually the shield will break, and you guys can go back to normally hurting it. Because again, if you hit it, it only does like 1 damage. Or, you know, in the case of Barrett, when he's shooting, it sometimes does nothing. So you have to work to break it. And so there, it gets broken there. You know, but it's got a huge range of attacks. It can hit you with the tail. It can shoot missiles. It can shoot laser beams, bullets, rockets, you know, all this other stuff. Electromagnetic impulses, you know, electromagnetic pulses, excuse me, EMPs. Impulses, no, that's not right. So anyway, when it's hanging out on the wall, you can have Barrett shoot, except he was turned the wrong way when I pushed the button. So then you can switch between characters on command, like I said, or you can just tell them, you know, hey, I want you to do this instead. So you can issue commands, and they tell you all that. All the little side panel things are really informative in what you can and can't do. It's just a lot of reading. You know, again, the old Final Fantasy, not that much reading. Yeah, okay, so it's Thunder Magic here instead of Bolt. And also, too, if you're in the middle of trying to do something and you get hit, it will stop you and it'll take your bar. So you have to be careful when you're, when you're doing stuff and when, you know, when you're attacking, when you're defending. You can defend in this game. I didn't really get it to work too well because when they introduce you to the concept of defending, those enemies, you know, just kind of stay back and shoot you, but it's not really consistent when they shoot you, so guarding is kind of strange. So I didn't really mess around too much with the guard mechanic, but it does exist. So certain characters have counterattacks that you can do, like Cloud's got counterattacks with the guard, so which is good. So it's kind of like Kingdom Hearts in that way, where you can guard and then counterattack when you have the option. There's a dodge roll as well, which is good for evasion. You know, I think that's kind of standard now. In any Tetsuya Nomura game, you get the dodge roll. So again, it put up its barrier, so we're having to break through it again. So you just do the same thing. You know, you can switch to the different modes as well to help break down the guard faster. And they give you a lot of potions early on here in the game because you need them. You will use up a lot of potions fighting against this boss, so because it hurts a lot. So and once the thing locks onto you too, it's kind of hard to get around everything and avoid it, you know, or guard against it or whatever. So it broke the shield again. So and at certain points during the boss's health, it'll start doing different things. It'll have different animations for what's going on, like it starts destroying different parts of the room that you're in order to, you know, try and catch you in that and hurt you and stuff. So, but it also has the tail laser thing is about to show up now too, and you have to get behind. Yeah, you have to get behind certain things like what they have here, all this rubble. You have to get behind it in order to avoid getting hit. So, because it'll track you and it'll do a lot of damage. So again, trying to use Thunder on it because it's weak to that. And it has a lot of HP. I mean, you can kind of see the bar there that's yellow. And, you know, Cloud kind of describes different aspects of the machine and what you're dealing with, and that was like a horribly mistimed ability. So again, you can use abilities and stuff whenever you want to, as long as the ATB bar is full. So, but yeah, the tail laser does a lot of damage, and it starts talking about limit breaks, like if your limit gets full, this is how you do that. And it's like a separate option down at the bottom with all the colors, which I think is a cool effect that they put in there as well. So, and you know, when I used the limit, it kind of snapped me to the enemy that I was locked onto. But and the lock-on is kind of weird, I think, in this game. Like, it says, you know, it's easy to switch between targets or whatever. If you click down, I think it's R3, you'll lock onto something, and then you use, like, I don't know if it's the D-pad to switch between it, or if you use, like, L2 and R2 or R1 or something like that to switch between it. I don't remember. But it was, I thought it was kind of weird to switch between enemies. Or just even to get the lock-on turned on and turned off, I thought was kind of strange too. So that's probably just me, though, you know, not knowing how to use it. But anyway, yeah, there's that as well. So yeah, so Cloud's got his what's called Punisher mode, I guess, where he just does a lot more fierce attacks, but he's slower to move. And Barrett has his overcharge where he shoots like 5 or 6 bullets that are stronger than just him spamming, you know, with his Gatling gun. So and what's kind of weird in the remake too is that on Cloud's sword you can see that he has a materia equipped inside of his sword, so you can actually see what weapons have like materia slots in them now, which I think is, you know, a really cool idea that you can actually see them on the character. You pick up the Restore materia, which is the first one that you get in the original game. But it's almost like he already has that equipped inside of his sword in the demo. But what's strange is that... Oh, wait, no, Barrett doesn't have the ice magic. He has... I think he has Cure. So what's kind of weird is he actually has the, like, the Restore materia on him, but you never really see it. You just see it in Cloud's sword. So I thought that was a weird... kind of a weird thing, so I don't know what to make of that. But again, the game's not final in the demo, you know, it's not even final after they release it too. You know, they come out with updates and patches and all this other stuff to change stuff, so. You know, but what I like about Square Enix games, at least the Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts series, is they try and do their best, you know, to get a good product out before they release it. I think the one that they'd like us to forget is Final Fantasy XIV, where it just went all wrong. You know, 11 kind of had the same problem where it went wrong. But for the most part, any game that Tetsuya Nomura works on, he really tries to give a good quality game when it's released. So I think one of the things was Final Fantasy 15 did have a lot of patches to it, because I think people just found, and it's such a big game, they found all sorts of stuff that they needed to patch out. So there was like 28 patches or something like that to Final Fantasy 15. you know, they really try very hard to release good games when they first come out. And I'm not paid to say that. You know, I don't want you guys to think that, oh, it's like you're all in the camp or whatever of that. It's like, well, no, I wasn't paid to say that. That's just kind of what they do. Their track record, I think, says that. So with the Kingdom Hearts games and, you know, Final Fantasy 15, they tried to do their best. So, so anyway, I do like Tetsuya Nomura's games. I think he's done a really great job with them. They look amazing. They play really well. They're really well thought through, I think. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to play this game here in the next couple days, I guess. So it'll be out on April 10th. So looking forward to playing it shortly thereafter. So. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, you know, if this Scorpion boss is anything to go by, there's bosses way later on in the game that I'm very curious to see what they did with them, because if this is as nuts as it is, I'm interested to see what they did with like Emerald Weapon and Ruby Weapon and just some of the big bosses near the end. It's just going to be really, really interesting to see what they've come up with for how to fight them. So anyway, that's the Scorpion boss down. So it's big and deadly, and it's no pushover, you know, and it's the first boss. So this game's going to be interesting. So then again, here's the kind of the tail laser thing that you see in the original Final Fantasy VII, where it, you know, it does like the sweeping counterattack thing, but here it goes off just because it's dead. But in the original game, it was just used as a massive counterattack. So so that was interesting to see that they incorporated that way.
You hear that? Damn thing showed you how it's done.
Come on, we've got to move.
Okay, so anyway, now the bomb timer has started, so now we got to get out. So again, you have 30 minutes to get out. In the original game, you have 10, which I didn't remember it being that low. But one difference between the original Final Fantasy VII and the remake is that there are certain sections that the enemies will block you out of. Like, you can't run away from them. You have to kill them. So in the original Final Fantasy VII, you can run away from fights, which is what I'll do here. You know, I was trying to save some time, you know, in the original game when I recorded it, so I just decided to run away from the enemies instead of fight them. But in the remake, you have to fight them. So that's something that's interesting. So you got to be real careful about your time in the remake, because it's like, oh, you know, 30 minutes is a lot of time, 20 minutes is a lot of time. But you know, there's just more to the game. Like this whole section here where Cloud's hanging on the, you know, on this beam, it's cabling or whatever it is, support beam. You know, that's not in the original game. The original game, you just ask her if she's okay and help her up. You know, you don't have to go through all this stuff to help her, and then run a completely separate course to get out. So they put that in there. That was new. And again, the encounters in the remake are set. In the original game, they're all random. So all the encounters that I got were random throughout this playthrough here. So there's also kind of like a little detour that I take, because I noticed that there was some item kind of off in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, well, that's strange. Why would they put that there? But it actually turned out to be another, what I'm thinking is some kind of key item in the game for later on. But I was thinking, oh, if this is here, it's probably worth grabbing on the way by. So, and again, I think the timer isn't really going to matter as much in the full game. But here, there was like something specifically mentioned that said, hey, you should try and get out in under 20 minutes because there's a special thing at the end. So I was like, well, I like that, so I'm going to go ahead and try and do that. So And again, the escape sequence in the original Final Fantasy game is very short and only took a couple of minutes. And what's nice is that the timer pauses as well in the remake, just as an aside, so that you can, save all that time. The conversation, doesn't take away from the time. But I think it would be more realistic if the timer was running while everybody was talking, because that's, the timer's not sitting down there going, oh, they're talking, I'm going to go ahead and pause, all this stuff. So this is the section that I go to. I go down this staircase after I defeat this extra enemy because I didn't see him at first. But I go down here instead because Barrett was coming up this way, and I didn't bother to check if you can switch between characters during this section if you had to follow Cloud, or if you could switch to Barrett at this section and go up that way as well. But anyway, I came back down because I saw some more Shinra boxes, and it turns out there's another Moogle medal. So again, I don't know what the Moogle medals do, but there is one over there, and so I figure in the full game that's going to be there as well. So it's just something that's like, oh, I probably should remember that. Again, the reason why they give you more time is because there's more enemies that you have to fight, and they're fixed. You can't run away from these guys because it won't let you proceed past a certain point unless you defeat them. So, I'm kind of a button masher for the most part in these games, like the Kingdom Hearts games and in this Final Fantasy VII Remake also. There's some times where it looks like I'm just like spazzing out on the screen, and that's because I was mashing the button on the wrong thing or the wrong button, because I'm still used to Kingdom Hearts where you use the X button to attack rather than, and also Final Fantasy 15 to a little bit of a degree as well. So then they switched it to square, and so I'm like, oh no, I'm hitting the wrong button, not doing the right thing. So, I guess I should talk about, there's a staggering mechanic now too, that if you hit an enemy enough, it'll go into kind of like a break or a stun, and then it does more damage when you hit it as well. So, and that's explained as well on the side there, that there's a staggering animation as well. So, I think this treasure chest can be gotten earlier. I think I just missed it on the way by. And see, again, you can see that Cloud opens it with his left hand because he's standing that way. But, so that attention to detail. Okay, so now we have these, we have these drones, first of all, that we have to destroy. But coming up here is some of those blue soldier enemies that we saw earlier in the original Final Fantasy VII game. And they are a lot different, and I don't know that they have like a cloaking device or just something that makes them more invincible, but they're a lot harder to hit. Barrett almost can't hit them, and you'll see this too here in a minute. And Cloud, when he uses one of his abilities, just whiffed all of them when he went through. So I don't know if the enemies have. Yeah, these guys. I don't know if the enemies have cloaking devices or just you have to hit them when they're standing still or something, but those guys are a lot more deadly now than they used to be. Those guys used to just be normal enemies, but in here they're awful. So you whip, yeah, you see all that red there where it says it's dodged all of that. So those guys are very difficult to hit now. Yeah, that whole ability just dodged all of that, just went through them. It's either like a cloaking device or something or other that stopped my attacks. So those guys are a lot different now, which I think is kind of cool. They made the enemies a lot more diverse, and just they have their own abilities and weaknesses and this kind of thing. So, and they don't do insignificant damage either, these guys. So I was like, well, this is pretty interesting that they put some annoying enemies right here when you're trying to get out, to slow you down. And they slow you down a lot. So, and again, you can encounter these guys in the original Final Fantasy VII game on your way out as well, but I just chose to run from them instead of fighting them, so. But yeah, they're pretty annoying.
Deal with that. Let's do this.
But yeah, I mean, you can do, I think if you were to get good enough at the system, you could hit an enemy with one character do something else with another character, and then switch to yet another character and do something. So the comboing and team attack system in this game should be pretty interesting if, you know, get a grapple on it and start using it in, you know, just more ways. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what you can do with this as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they've done throughout here. If the demo's anything to go by, the demo is, I think, fantastic. It's definitely worth your time if you're like even considering getting Final Fantasy VII Remake. I would definitely consider going and getting the demo and trying it. So that's the whole section for the bomb there, so we get out on time. So we'll get this special sequence at the end. But yeah, it's I don't know. They've done a lot of interesting stuff, and it's this whole section here, or this scene here, is new. That you can see kind of the Shinra Corporation is doing something in the background where the bomb didn't really set off the reactor, but they just call in a bunch of other tools, I guess, you know, the laser beams and machines and stuff to just take out the reactor themselves. So that's definitely different. That's not in the original game, and I think some of that might be explained in the story in the original Final Fantasy VII, but I can't remember because it's been quite a long time since I've played the original Final Fantasy VII all the way through. But I can't remember if they kind of mentioned that, oh, they're working against you in the background or this kind of thing. But anyway, in the remake, you can see they're working against you to a certain degree. So anyway, that little green orb there is supposed to be the restore materia, I believe. At least I think that's what they were trying to do there. Just as a side note, this room is shaking kind of up and down. There's a way inside of the menu, if that's annoying to you, there's a way inside of the menu to turn that off. So they gave you options to kind of turn off some of the effects as well, in case you're sensitive to that kind of thing, but you still want to play the game. They gave you some options to turn that off.
Can you walk?
This whole thing here where she falls down, that's not in the original game either.
I'll take that
She
as
only
a
falls
yes.
down the once when she gets the huge piece of cement falls on her or whatever. This whole thing is new here where this pipe falls down and Cloud has to kind of get back up. That's not in the original.
Okay, that was pretty cool.
It's just trying to show that, oh, Cloud's cool. Yeah, you know, that smug that he does, that smirk or whatever that he does. Smolder, I don't know what you want to call that. But anyway, there's a whole lot of just embellished stuff where they're like, oh, this guy's cool. You know, he can do all this stuff. In the original game, you know, they just had some smoke effects that kind of came out from the Mako reactor, and you can back the video up and see that as well if you want to. Because again, it's hard to line up everything one-to-one. I tried to do some of the major stuff to try and line it up, but I couldn't do everything. So, but anyway, that is pretty much the extent of the demo. As soon as you leave from the bombing mission, that's it. So, anyway, so the original Final Fantasy VII is done, and this whole section here is just showing, hey, this stuff's coming up, you know, buy the game. So if you do the 30-minute timer, you'll still see this, this whole teasing section here at the end. You know, and it doesn't tease too far ahead, but it does tease a little bit, so you'll see some of this. But if you do the 20-minute timer, after the logo goes away, a whole other thing comes up that's teasing something else. So, so you have this here. So, and that's it. That's that whole 10 seconds there is what you get if you do the 20-minute timer instead. So, so anyway, then it gives you the option to purchase the game online if you want to after you're done playing the demos. So, but anyway, that's it. That's the side-by-side comparison of Final Fantasy VII with the remake. So, and my commentary for it. So, anyway, I hope you guys found this interesting. If you if you want to see more Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy VII Remake content, just drop a line in the comments, like this video. Thanks again to some people recently who subscribed to the channel. So we're getting closer to the 20 subscriber goal. So I'm really thankful for everybody who's subscribed, and I just hope that more people will. You know, I'm trying to make better videos and better content. So if you guys have any comments of what you'd like to see us do, that would be awesome. I'll keep trying to do what I can, and I'll just try and keep making more videos and editing them and this kind of thing. So anyway, but thanks guys for being awesome. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you again here real soon. See you guys later.